Hey Deck It Out Juniors, let's take a look at your box for August. So in your box, you're going to have this square piece of wood, your monogram, 4 pieces for your frame. We're gonna build a frame. And then 5 flowers. You'll just get a variety of flowers. And then you will get 5 paint colors, which will be included in your kit, your sponges, and a paintbrush this month. Also sandpaper. So to get started, make sure you have all your materials, lay down your craft paper to protect your work surface, put your stencil aside, and first you are going to paint the background of your board. So you'll grab your sponge, paint this whatever color you want, and then you're going to paint your frame pieces. Paint those whatever color you want. Okay, again, you can use the other side of the sponge, or you can use your other sponges that were included in your kit to paint. So grab your sponge, paint these up, paint them every different color you have, or paint them all one color, or leave them raw. But all the wood pieces, the frame and the square, should get painted now. Okay, junior DIYers, I wanted to hop on quick to give you a little bit of a tip for painting your frame. So I don't have a ton of paint on my sponge, and I'm just wiping it on really carefully. Not a lot of paint, and I'm just kind of washing it on or wiping it on really quickly. And it's really nice thin coats of paint, so it dries pretty quickly. Remember, it doesn't come off of your clothes very well. So try to keep it on your hands, and we'll keep spreading it around like this, and then we'll have it dry before we assemble the frame. So do as many coats of paint as you want. I'm doing really thin coats of paint so that it dries quickly, and then I lay my boards down. So you'll see that I did the same thing with my background piece, but I just wanted to share with you how I'm not using a ton of paint for my frame. And I'm getting it painted really quickly, and then we will move on to our next pieces. So keep painting those frame pieces. Let those dry before we talk about assembly. Okay, now your pieces need to dry. Mine are getting there. They're just about ready to be used. I want you to check your square. Before we frame this, grab your sandpaper and lightly sand with the grain. Okay, so going the same way that the wood kind of flows. Lightly sand this piece because you need to sand it to prep it for your stencil. Okay, so you're going to lightly sand this, and we will frame this piece. If you want, you could lay this stencil down and paint this part before you frame it. So if you wanted to do that right now, because then most of your project would be prepped and ready to go. We're going to do these flowers after we frame so that you can figure out how you want to arrange them inside your monogram. Okay, to stencil, you've sanded this. I'm still letting my pieces dry. We're going to flip over the stencil, smooth it out. You're going to go to a corner and you're going to peel back. The clear and the blue need to stay attached to each other. The white needs to come up clean. Okay, so we're just going to pull it back like this. Now this is a big sticker, okay? So now you're going to lay it down, center it. Use a ruler if you want. I like to eyeball, and then sometimes I like to just check with my fingers as my measuring tool. So put it where you like it. Now, it's not adhered because I haven't put my hands over it, but once I do that, I can't move it. So make sure it's where you want it to be. Then use your hands or your fist to smooth it out, to push that sticker down onto your board. Okay, and then we're gonna repeat that peeling process. I like to go to the corner again, and I'll start and I'll peel up the clear. Now, you might have multiple pieces of transfer tape on like I do, or I might have just put one piece of transfer tape on there. depending on how many you have, you know, you just have to remove all of it. So it might be in sections or it might just be one piece. So remove it all and then smooth it back out with your hand, okay, to make sure all the pieces are stuck down nice and tight. Okay, so now you're ready to paint your monogram letter. Pick your color, get your small sponge, okay, and then you're gonna put some paint on and then dab it off. You don't need a lot of paint, thickness of tissue paper, and then you're just going to dab, okay, on the stencil part. Now this might take 1 or 2 coats of paint, but less paint is better, because if you get too much paint on here, it's gonna get gloopy. You run the risk of it bleeding underneath your stencil, okay? So don't push paint. Don't paint it like an art class, okay? We're just going to dab. And when you do really nice thin coats, you can come back and do a second and third coat if you would like, once it's dry, to kind of smooth it out and make it look solid, okay? But maybe you want to do lighter coats so it's more rustic. You get to decide. This is your project. I can't wait to see what you paint. But we'll get this painted up and we'll talk about next steps with framing. Okay, once you're done painting and your pieces are dry and your stencil is dry, you can peel up. Again, I like corners, so I'm going to start in the corner and I'm going to peel up my stencil. Now, if your paint is a little bit wet and you're peeling up, that's okay. Just make sure your stencil doesn't fall back down on your project, because then the paint will be left there, okay? So I think this looks awesome. I wanted something a little bit more bold for the letter M. And now we're going to talk about framing. Okay, so we're going to frame. You're gonna just have to figure out where the pieces go. So I have to go this way. The pieces go. You're going to need to let this sit for 24 hours. Okay, so in this tube, this is wood glue, okay? And so now you can take this and you're going to put a bead of glue right down the edge and then tuck your board onto the side, okay? So repeat that process all the way around. And then sometimes I like to put some glue on the upper sides of these bars right here. Or sorry, not bars, but pieces of wood, right? So I'm just gonna run the glue bead down. I'm just gonna add the glue on these sides right here so you can see. Push this one out of the way. I'm gonna put this one in. And right now I'm just setting them nicely into place. But when you get done with this, okay, and you have all your pieces lined up, you can put pressure on them somehow. So at home, maybe you can find, maybe you want to find like some heavier books to put on the sides, or maybe you have clamps. Maybe someone in your family has some wood clamps that you want to put on it. You want this to dry for about 24 hours to 48 hours to make sure it's nice and solid and framed up so that your frame doesn't go anywhere when we're done. While this is drying, we're going to talk about how to paint our flowers, and then you are going to use this wood glue to adhere your flowers to your project. But painting your wood flowers, they also need dry time, so have this ready to go, and we're going to start talking about those. So while this is drying, we can work on our flowers, they can dry, and then we'll come back together and we'll put it all together into your masterpiece. Okay, so this is drying. I shuffled that to the side. I'm going to talk to you about painting your wood flowers. Now, painting your wood flowers, you could leave them natural like they are, or you could water down the paint that you have in your kit and you could paint them that way. So have some water on hand. I gave you a good amount of paint because I wasn't exactly sure what parts you were painting, each color. So you're just gonna have to kind of play with this, water down your paint. Okay, We give you one paintbrush and you just stir it up. It's really kind of like a liquidy sort of paint. And then pick a flower and then you can just add the paint to it. Now, don't push too hard because these are, this is wood flowers, so they're breakable. They're fragile, okay? Also, don't put too much water in there so that you make them super wet because then you'll have to stop to let them dry. Now, you could put paint in a larger cup and then dip them. Okay, I'll just show you. You could dip them, and that's kind of cool looking if you just dip the edges too. Or you could dip them in your little cup like I just did and then use the paintbrush to kind of get into these little pieces. So this part, the flower painting, is going to take you a little bit of time. And you want these flowers to dry all the way before we put them on our sign because like I said, they are a little bit fragile, especially when you get the wood wet, it's going to be more fragile. Okay, so get these flowers painted up. Again, add water. If you want to add more water, then that will dilute this color even more, right? So it'll make it a different color. Blend colors. Maybe you have some colors at home you want to use. Any paint should be pretty okay to use. We are using like wall paint, flat acrylic wall paint. So any paint you have at home, if you want to change up your colors from what you have in your kit, you could do so. All right, so get these painted and we're gonna let them dry and then we'll come back and we'll put them on our frame. Okay, so I wanted to show you what I did. I took this flower and I scrunched it up to make it fit in the paint, twisted it around a little bit, and then I'm very gentle and I'm squeezing out the extra paint because there's a lot in there, right? And now I'm just gonna lightly pull the flower petals back out to where I want them. So when you get these flowers wet, you can reform them. You can also break them like I just took off a petal. You can also kind of reform them. So I'm going to let this one sit and dry. I have baby wipes, but maybe you have, a paper towel next to you or something to dry your hands off. But I'm going to kind of look at my flower arrangement so far that I have. And I had this one drying upside down because there's a lot of extra paint in this one that I just kind of tried to get out a little bit. And now I got a little bit of orange on there. That's okay. So just kind of take a look at your flowers and what you have going on. There's a little orange on that one too. And see what colors you want because you are going to arrange them on your frame in the corner. I mean, maybe you're going to do it on the frame itself. Maybe you're going to do it on the monogram itself. So just kind of look at your colors, kind of play around with them. You can leave them the natural color. It's a beautiful color. You can do that. So don't think that you have to paint all of them. Okay? So keep painting, finish up your flowers, let them dry, and then we'll come back and assemble. Okay, junior DIYers, we're at the last and final step. You're going to take your flowers, arrange them either on the frame, inside the frame, however you want to do this, okay? Whatever corner you want to do this in. Maybe you want the cluster of 3 there and the 2 up here. You're just going to keep playing with it until you are happy with it. And then you're going to take your wood glue, put a good amount of wood glue down, okay? And then let it dry again for about 24 hours. And then you'll have your framed project. So I'm just gonna play with mine a little bit, try to arrange it, and then we'll see what we come up with. All right, so here we go. Here's my finished piece. It is drying, but you might have seen me kind of angle it up like this. I wanted to angle it up to make sure that this bottom flower wasn't in the way when I stand my frame on my shelf. And when you glue the flowers, I wanted to make sure they were up and not angled towards me because it's going to be standing on my shelf. And so I want these flowers to be pointing out. So make sure you take all of that into account when you finish your project. But look at this, girls. You made a frame sign. You worked with wood flowers. You have your monogram. You picked out your paint colors. See, I bumped that. You picked out your paint colors. This is your project. You did an awesome job. I can't wait to see it. Have your family or you, if you're on social media, come into our Deck It Out DIY Facebook group and show us what you made. We can't wait to see it, and we'll have you back in another 2 months.